Heads up, this video includes mechanics/mild story spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. If you're worried about that and haven't played it yet, tread carefully. This is Challenger Approaching, where we take a character who isn't playable in Smash Bros. Yet and go deep into detail on how they could work if they got in for real. And I know what you're probably thinking. Wait, just Noah? Where's Mio? You can't separate them like that. But Smash can handle a Xenoblade 3 newcomer in a few different ways, including having only one playable. So I've decided to tackle each of them separately. Noah in this video, Mio later this year, but with designs that could also work together. And this time, it's Noah's turn. So allow me to show you how easy it'd be for this anime sword fighter to stand out. Noah! Noah is, well, the spoiler-free version is, he is one of countless soldiers inhabiting the world of Ionios, set in the future of the first two numbered Xenoblade titles in which their worlds have somehow merged together. Like nearly everyone in his home nation of Kevis, Noah was trained from a very young age to fight the enemy nation of Agnes. Not that any of them had a choice, as their very life essence slowly ticked away to nothing, only replenishable by slaying enemy soldiers and taking theirs. Fighting to live, living to fight, such is their world. Noah himself had a special role in all of this. As an Offseer, he was specially trained to play a melody on the flute that allows each battle's many fallen soldiers to rest in peace. Doing this for years gave him plenty of time to reflect on all the violence and death he bore witness to, and wonder what the true purpose of his people's endless war really was. Then everything he thought he knew changed one night when a mission his assigned colony was enlisted into went off the rails. Suddenly, Noah, two of his closest companions, and three soldiers of the sworn enemy Agnes were given a strange power that both inexorably connected them and forced them to team up in order to survive. But with that newfound power came the chance to choose their own fates, and maybe, just maybe, bring the conflict to an end. If it wasn't obvious, this character has a lot going on beneath his JRPG protagonist veneer. Noah's empathy and compassion toward even his enemies clashes with his world's predominant ideals. His strengths and values and personal flaws are brought to bear as the story plays out, helped in no small part by a certain antagonist who serves as a perfect foil. And his relationship with Mio, how the pair grows from unwilling enemies to unsteady allies to friends to something more, drives Noah to keep going. Basically, there's a reason why everyone ships these two. Which is relevant for us, because as long as Smash 6 happens in the next few years, there's a very good chance we'll get someone from Xenoblade 3 as a newcomer. But figuring out who and how they'd work is complicated, because we have two main protagonists with near equal billing who are very closely interlinked. Could Noah end up playable, with Mio cheering from the sidelines? Or Mio as the lead, with Noah as support? Or is Xenoblade big enough now to justify two newcomers at once, as a Pokemon trainer-style tag team? With so many different paths to walk, I thought it best to cover them one at a time. So let's take the first step and ask, how would Noah fight in Smash? Appearance-wise, Noah's basic design doesn't need to change at all. It already accounts for modern hardware power and aesthetic sensibilities, so he can jump right into Smash with his signature sword fighter class outfit. He'd also bring over his personal blade, which he can materialize and dematerialize at will. Noah's sword is unique among Kevesi soldiers, a bright red longsword powered by ether energy dubbed the Veiled Sword. Named such because it actually contains a second sword within. The mysterious Lucky 7 was entrusted to Noah when he was younger, and he'll use it a couple times in his moveset. We'll get to that later. Noah wields this unique weapon in some distinct ways. Many of his attack animations use circular motions with extra wind-up or spin. His sword isn't that heavy, but he seems to use the motions to create extra momentum and make his attacks hit harder. Worth keeping in mind, for his moves that use a sword, that is. How about alternate costumes? His default is the default, shown in his stock icon with a red coat and black undershirt. Alt 2 gives him a light gray coat and white undershirt, inspired by Mio, of course. Alt 3 has a cerulean blue coat and gray undershirt, the color scheme of Noah's Kevesi squadmate and self-proclaimed MVP, Lance. And Alt 4 pulls from his other squadmate, with a lime green coat and black undershirt inspired by Uni. She is the boss. Alt 5 is a mix-up, a dark blue coat and orange undershirt based on a costume Noah can get through Xenoblade 3's DLC. Alt 6 gives him a pale lavender coat and navy blue undershirt and hair tie, based on the casual attire of the Kevesi queen Melia. Alt 7 trades that for a dark gold coat and black undershirt based on someone. Finally, Noah's last alt is a full model swap that gives him his Kevesi Offseer attire from the beginning of the game. A lot of variation here. What should we do for Noah's fighting style? Well, pulling inspiration from his weapon type and default class, how about a unique footsies-based fighter? Yes, I know the sword fighter class doesn't normally do defense, but hear me out. Noah uses the disjointed hitboxes of his weapon attacks to outspace opponents, striking with superior range from positions where they struggle to damage him back. And it's some impressive range. Maybe not Shulk tier, but he can give Ike or Cloud or Pyra a run for their money. Which ties into Noah's other big trait, being good at standing his ground in a pinch and preventing opponents from getting in on him. With his movement and spacing, approaching him can be surprisingly tricky for someone who isn't a pure zoner, but if his opponent does get in on him, he's in trouble, so don't over-rely on it. And also subscribe and turn notifications on so you don't have to rely on the algorithms telling you when a new video's out. For exact stats, Noah stands a little above average size-wise, since Smash has a lot of cartoony characters and he isn't one. His weight value might seem kinda high, but his base HP in Xenoblade 3 is actually above average. And while his sword fighter class doesn't want constant pressure on it, it is more durable than most attacker classes. But that vulnerability ties into Noah's recovery being subpar, especially if he can't get any breathing room to start it. The good news? His mobility stats actually aren't half bad. With middling run speed, airspeed only slightly below average, and a long and very fast initial dash inspired by the ones you can do in his game, Noah can reposition on the fly and keep opponents at arm's length. That said, he doesn't walk very fast and his jumps are kinda floaty, so making small adjustments in neutral can be finicky. Noah's offenses are a weird mix. His actual damage output is pretty good, as expected for an attacker class. With strong damage per hit backed by a solid combo game, he can dish it out really well. However, most of Noah's attacks aren't very fast. Poor frame data leaves him vulnerable up close and susceptible to combos. Like I said, he does not want constant aggro. His knockout power is also flawed. Noah's best finishers are slow and hard to land, and his backup options don't do the job until higher percents. That reluctance to take lives is etched into how he fights, even in a platform fighter where no one actually dies. So how does Noah put all of that into motion? His basic attacks may be basic, but they set the stage for the rest. His jab combo has him take his left hand off his sword and punch forward, then place it back and perform a spinning kick with his right foot, then carry the momentum from it into a full spin ending with a horizontal slash like the one shown here. With decently quick startup and solid damage, it's an emergency option up close he will use often. Noah's forward tilt has him swing his sword downward with both hands at a diagonal angle. A grounded spacing tool, it brings Pyra's forward tilt to mind. Compared to hers, it's a couple frames faster but has a bit less range and power to compensate. For his up tilt, Noah ducks a little to build momentum, then swings his sword in an upward arc from front to back. Covers the space around him completely and with above average damage, though it's quite the commitment for a tilt. Despite that, he never loses control over the swing. Again, the spins are just to give his attacks more oomph. Noah's down tilt performs one of the sword fighter class battle arts from a crouching position, thrusting his sword forward at ground level with one hand. While pretty slow, it has impressive reach. Also has a chance at tripping opponents, setting up tech chases and stuff. Then Noah's dash attack is an adapted version of the sword fighter talent art. He cuts the windup short and spins sideways only once, but still brings his sword down with a powerful swing. This one actually is as strong as it looks, but it's such a commitment that using it haphazardly is asking to get punished. Works best at catching landings or backward movement. But Noah has more than just a sword to use. Xenoblade 3 has a full-on job system with the ability to swap to other classes and use arts you've learned from one class while in another. Noah's smash attacks all pull from the signature class of his pal Lands, the Heavy Guard. For his forward smash, Noah dematerializes his Veiled Sword and swaps it for the Heavy Guard's signature Shield Blade. Then he pulls back, holds the shield blade sideways, and rams it straight forward half a dash length with a few frames of super armor. This strong yet very slow move works best when you predict an enemy attack and time it to blow right through, tanking the hit and retaliating hard. But good luck using it outside of that. Then his up smash has Noah swap to the shield blade and heave it upward with a powerful uppercut swing. The arc's a more exaggerated version of his up tilt, with a clean hit in front of him and a not as strong but still pretty strong late hit as the shield blade falls back behind him and impacts the ground, because this weapon is really heavy. And for his down smash, Noah swings the shield blade downward and strikes the ground with enough force to create a shockwave of ether energy around him. Invites comparisons to Robin's down smash, but more straightforward. Noah slams his weapon straight down with no frontward hitbox. The shockwave comes out sooner than Robin's and reaches higher, but it's only active for a few frames instead of Robin's 10. Noah's aerials start out with a space clearer. He turns sideways and performs an almost completely circular slash around him. This spins slower than the start of his dash attack, as it's designed for protection. Once it gets going, anyway, because its double-digit frame startup means you have to think ahead. So Lance isn't the only ally Noah borrows a weapon from. Several of his aerials pull from Uni's medic gunner class. His forward air swaps his sword for the class's signature gun rod, swinging the head of the staff forward with a slight rising arc. An aerial spacing tool particularly good at catching opponents jumping, with great forward reach and horizontal knockback built for stage control instead of combos. Noah's back air uses the gun rod again, this time turning it around and thrusting the staff end behind him as the head generates a blast of ether, one of his most reliable finishers, and therefore a key part of his arsenal, though its slow startup and weaker sour spot on the actual rod part does give it a learning curve. Noah's up air just uses his sword, swinging it in an arc above him from front to back, with a partial spin because why not? A bit slow to come out, but it's got a lot of range and lasts a long time, so it's great at juggling and closing stocks at high percents anyway. Then Noah's down air swaps to the gun rod again, this time aiming the rifle end below him and firing a short-ranged ether spread shot below that also stalls his momentum. Built for edge guards and emergency landing mix-ups, it's got a surprisingly wide hitbox and a sweet spot in the center that spikes. It's also quite slow and unwieldy, but you probably guessed that. How about his grab game? Noah's grab animations have him take his left hand off his sword and reach forward. It's the usual swordy grab, with average range and frame data. Gives him a solid tool for catching opponent shielding. His pummel has him knee his opponent, since he doesn't have a hand free and his sword isn't small enough to bash people with. Don't worry, his throws are more interesting. Noah's forward throw adapts the motion of the art sword strike, spinning the opponent around twice and flinging them straight forward. The low knockback angle is great for forcing low recoveries. Noah's back throw has him push his opponent behind him, swap to the shield blade, and shove it into them forcefully. Higher knockback than his forward throw, but a higher angle. His up throw has him bring his sword up with his right arm and quickly move his left hand from the opponent to it to perform a vertical slash that sends them upward. And his down throw swaps to the gun rod, sticks the rifle end onto the ground, and fires with enough force to create an ether explosion that sends the opponent flying. This one is Noah's kill throw, KOing off the top around 150-ish. Finally, what do his taunts look like? Noah's up taunt has him hold his sword in front of him defensively, saying, "I have to fight," as he feels he has no other choice. His side taunt is more confident, brandishing his sword sideways as it flares with ether, saying, "Here and now." And his down taunt? Noah dismisses his blade, pulls out his flute, and starts to play. If left alone, he does an entire segment of the Kavesi Offseer's song for the longest taunt in the game. Perfect for rubbing it in when your buddy SDs like an idiot. So Noah's specials have something extra going on. To best capture the feel of how combat flows in Xenoblade 3, I've brought in a version of the arts palette. Each of the 4 battle art icons on Noah's UI represent one of his specials, with a meter that encircles each of the small icons as time goes by, slowing down if you haven't dealt damage in a while. Unlike in Xenoblade 3, you can still use Noah's specials if the corresponding art isn't charged, though doing so drains the meter. But waiting until it is ready gets you a stronger version. A key part of playing as Noah would be making split-second decisions of whether to use some specials early or wait until the time is right. But you see that large icon? That's Noah's personal talent art, and it's tied to his neutral special. This icon's meter only fills if you play the role of attacker and deal damage to enemies, filling more if specifically a special hits them. And it doesn't empty if you use the move early. Keep that in mind, alright? Because this is actually 2 moves in one. By default, Noah gathers ether into his sword and performs a downward swing straight ahead. The force of the attack makes the ether flare out into a fan shape a short distance ahead. It's deceptively useful, as the swing and the ether are two separate hits close enough together that opponents who shield the first hit have to block the second one. This lets it pressure damaged shields with the first part to ensure the second pokes through. But if his talent art is ready, Noah performs that instead. Infinity Blade has him disassemble his sword and grab Lucky 7 out of its core. Remember it from earlier? Swinging that downward instead, the impossibly sharp edge generates so much power that it deals a stronger hit with greater shield damage and sends out a hard-hitting transcendent shockwave with infinite forward range, hitting through walls, projectiles, and anything else in the way. Noah's neutral special is an area of effect attack with different roles based on which art he uses. Ground Beat works with ledge traps, tech chases, platform pressure, and harassing damaged shields. Infinity Blade is a full-screen punish, zone breaker, or edge guard that can't be contested. The latter being transcendent does have downsides though, since while enemy attacks can't stop it, it can't stop enemy attacks either. Lengthier end lag also makes it riskier to throw out. That's the complicated one out of the way. How do the rest of Noah's specials work? Let's see with his side special. You didn't think we were done pulling from other classes, did you? Variable Turret is another heavy guard art, and in Smash, it lets Noah do something interesting. On use, Noah swaps to the shield blade, plants it down, and flips the handle forward, revealing an ether Gatling gun housed within. Hold B to have him charge the weapon, and upon release, he fires a rapid volley of pure energy bullets while deploying a protective force field that blocks most attacks from the front. Each bullet is weak on its own, but the longer you charge, the more of them you fire, meaning the force field is out longer too, and the further they travel. It takes a little over a second to reach a full charge, but if this art's meter is fully replenished when you use it, you get a full charge immediately without having to hold. Variable Turret is an unusual move that combines defense and long-range harassment. Use it to pester opponents who try to hardcore zone you while shrugging off their own long-distance attacks. When timed right, it also lets Noah punish predictable attacks with a hefty amount of damage. But this move's biggest drawback is how much of a commitment it is. Any opponents who are nearby and aren't pinned down by your shots can jump over them, approach from the air, and punish from any direction other than the front, or just grab you. The force field also has a limit to how much damage it can take, so don't abuse it. Alright, up special now. Noah's recovery move is kinda similar to one already in the game. However, it has some key differences. His personal take on Air Slash is another sword fighter art, with a different animation than Shulk's version and different effects. On use, Noah pauses briefly, then leaps upward. At the apex of the jump, he does a rising backflip slash that covers the area in front of and above him. Unlike with Shulk, this one doesn't have a slash at the beginning, but Noah can adjust the angle he rises at by pressing left or right. If used in the air, he can also drift left or right a little at the start before the jump, not unlike Falcon Dive. And if this move's meter is full, the leap goes further, comes out slightly faster, and Noah performs a series of rising upward slashes during the ascent, giving him greater protection and the ability to punish out of his shield. Veiled Air Slash is a recovery move that prioritizes ease of recovery, and also an interesting anti-air or platform trap in its base form, but go long enough without using it and it becomes a hard-hitting punish too. The base version is okay distance-wise and the flexibility helps, but Noah is wide open at the start. This makes him vulnerable to direct pressure off stage unless he hasn't had to recover for a while. If you've paid attention, you might have guessed we're using a medic gunner art for Noah's down special. But I bet you didn't expect how this one'll work. Power Ring is a support move in Xenoblade 3, granting an attack buff to the entire party as long as they stay within its area of effect. AoE buffs are a recurring game mechanic. On use, Noah swaps to the gun rod and taps down with the rifle end, dealing weak damage on its own. But if he strikes the ground or a platform, it generates a glowing ring of ether matching his player color that extends around him to a little over a platform length in size. For the next 12 seconds, as long as Noah is within the ring, including up to a full hop height above, his attacks deal increased damage. If you wait until its meter is full before using it, the ring extends further horizontally and lasts a few seconds longer, giving you more room and time to use a damage boost. Oh, and you know how this is a team support move in Xenoblade 3? Well, if Noah has any teammates, they get the boost too. A weaker version, but it still gives them an edge. Power Ring is something you rarely see in Smash. An area of effect buff. Makes Noah even better at trading hits or pressuring opponents hanging from ledges. Makes him a better team player too, though the buff doesn't affect knockback, so Noah's difficulty taking stocks remains. And it doesn't let certain teammates do really cheesy stuff. You also can't reposition the ring once it's active, and you can't place another until 10 seconds after the previous one has gone away. All that's left is Noah's final smash. We have several options we could choose here. The one I went with incorporates as much still missing from the moveset as I could. Powered up by the Smash Ball, Noah summons Mio to his side, and the two interlink into their fused Ouroboros form with Noah at the helm, immediately generating a sword and slashing forward. If they hit someone, the foes struck are left stunned and helpless, and the camera zooms in on the Ouroboros as Noah reaches into the core on the entity's chest and pulls out a second, ominous-looking sword from thin air. Then he gathers himself, holds the blade above his head, and brings it down with a slash so powerful it splits the very air apart. And it's not for show. This thing can cut through nearly anything. Items or projectiles? Destroyed. Assist trophies? Felled instantly. Enemy shields or super armor? Pierced through like they're not even there. And anyone left taking the full force of the hit? Well, let's just say they might need sending off. This is how Noah could fight in Smash. A soldier with an empathetic and compassionate heart amidst a world with no place for such things, given a chance along with 5 others to alter their fates and use their newfound power to change everything. Though he might prefer not to fight, his skill with a sword and other weapons borrowed from his allies means he will prevail if he has to. Helps that Smash is just a competition and no one actually dies. Noah fights with a combination of power and range, outspacing enemy attacks and outtrading their attempts to hit back. He also has some answers to enemy zoning, with solid mobility and moves like his side special to deal with foes who try to wall him out. And he excels at offering support and opportunistic offense in team matches, working perfectly with an aggressive, tanky ally. Hey, I know who could do that. However, Noah's knockout power is unusually weak for his archetype. Enemies will often hang on for surprisingly long. Having poor frame data with few fast attacks means most of his moves, even his go-to options, are a commitment, and he falls apart when opponents manage to slip past his attacks and aggro him hard, as his only answers to prolonged pressure are conditional or flawed. This was an interesting one. The toughest part was narrowing down exactly what I wanted to use. Huge moveset potential on this guy, as anyone who's played his game can attest. I chose to limit my scope to mainly his default class, with a few moves from Uni and Lanz's classes to supplement it. Didn't pull from others to keep the design from getting too cluttered, and I specifically avoided the Agnes trios so they're available for Mio. Also had to show restraint on which mechanics to pull from. Noah could get much crazier than this, but I settled on just a Xenoblade 3 style arts palette to keep things from getting out of hand, or overpowered, which is also why I limited his Ouroboros form to just his final smash. And I could have used something even more broken there. If you know, you know. Noah's one of several potential Smash 6 frontrunners from big recent first-party RPGs. Funny how that works. Say what you want about how much attention the genre's gotten in Smash nowadays, but these games sure are good at coming up with new, interesting main characters. And I bet this series will feature a few others going forward too. Special thanks for this video to these folks. Thanks especially to my patrons for the continued support. Wow, getting to be a lot of you. And now's your chance to shine. Anyone supporting me on Patreon can vote on which of these 3 characters gets the Smash treatment next. Who will it be? So, until next time, look up, face forward toward your chosen horizon, and just walk on.